Hey guys, we're going to be doing something a little bit different today. There are a lot of videos that cover what I'm about to cover with you guys, but the reason why I'm doing this is there's some misinformation on the internet, and I don't know, unless you seem to have like a wall of 3D printers and you're an expert in 3D printing, there's not really a good video or tutorial on how to do what I'm about to show you unless you're an expert. There's nothing out there for beginners. So what I'm going to do here is, this is a Creality Ender 3D Pro printer. I bought it a couple years ago. It's got a lot of prints through it. It's probably done, if I had to guess, maybe a couple hundred prints. I use it for work, so it sees a lot of use. And one of the things I don't like about it is the bed is kind of concave. There's high spots on the left, on the right, front, back, and it kind of dips in the center. So it's kind of tough to get good bed adhesion in the center sometimes. So what I'm going to be doing here is I'm going to be installing an updated motherboard, which should make it a lot quieter. I'm also going to be installing called a BLTouch bed leveling kit. So what it'll do is it'll sample the bed height at either like a 3x3 grid or a 4x4 grid, and it'll compensate for any bed irregularities. So what I want to do here is kind of just give you a before and after. So you've probably seen all those benchmarks that are out there. Let me see if I can get you down a little bit lower. There's that benchy thing that everybody seems to like to print as kind of a 3D printer torture test. So the quality is not bad. This is just, you know, with minimal adjustments. This is the original nozzle. I have not replaced the nozzle. This is just black PLA. Stands for polylactic acid. It's a very common 3D printing material. So quality's not bad there. I also printed a screwdriver pegboard mount. This is from Thingiverse. Again, quality's not bad. And here's another one of the same thing. So this is on the stock hardware. I have not upgraded this machine yet. What I'd like to do is do the upgrade, and I'm not going to cover the noise differences because that's been covered ad nauseum. Everybody's covered that. No need for me to repeat it. But what I do want to do is kind of see, does the print quality change? You know, because of the higher quality motherboard with the higher quality stepper motor drivers, am I going to see any improvements in print quality? Any improvements in print speed? And what else does this kind of let you do? So let's take a look at the kit. There's also some misinformation on the internet about this kit. This is from an Amazon seller called First Layer. I'll leave a link to this kit in the description. It appears to be all genuine OEM stuff. I don't see any obvious signs that there's any knockoffs in here. But now this particular kit, though online it says it does not include a mount for the BLTouch, which is the bed leveling. It actually does. So you do not need to order a BLTouch mount. Okay? I did. I didn't know. I mean, if you look at the description or the questions for this kit, it says it doesn't include one. You should 3D print one first. Well, guess what? You don't have to, because it does come with one. I'm going to show you. I've already opened this, obviously. Come on. So this is the BLTouch kit. And you can see it clearly comes with mounts. You don't need to buy one. There's also different types of cables. And one of the reasons I wanted to buy the motherboard and this kit from the same seller was to hopefully ensure that I got the right cable. So this is the cable that comes with it. This is the end that goes into the motherboard here. Hopefully you can see that. And this is the end that goes in the BLTouch. So there are some other cables out there that have, I think, where the cable splits, and then, you know, one end goes into the Z-axis stop, the other one goes into the BLTouch port. I just wanted to show you what comes with this particular kit. Now, as far as the motherboard, let's take a quick look at that. So this is the new board. It's a 4.2.7 board. It's based on the ST Microelectronics STM32F1 microcontroller, whereas the stock board that comes with this particular printer, I believe, is an Atmel Mega 256. Don't hold me to that, but it's somewhere in the Atmel Mega series. It's not a bad microprocessor, but it's about 25 years old. It's the same platform that's in the Arduino, actually. So it seems like a pretty high quality board. These are the updated stepper motor drivers with the heatsink on there. This board actually has a proper fuse in case something gets shorted out. So I guess without further ado, let's start tearing this thing apart and see what happens. Now, another thing I should mention is that on the back it clearly says Ender 3 Pro. So we're going to find out if this is really plug and play and ready to go for an Ender 3 Pro, or if I have to do any firmware compilation or firmware updating. The Amazon listing says you have to be prepared to flash your firmware, but they don't really say why or under what conditions. You would think that if they ship you a kit with the motherboard and the BLTouch, that it would come ready to go for the BLTouch, right? Don't know if that's the case. So I think we're going to try it with the stock firmware first. We're going to see if it works. I'm not expecting it to. And then we may end up compiling our own firmware, which is based off of something called Marlin. That's on GitHub. Again, I'll show you all this on the computer later on. There's tutorials online that show you how to download it, install Visual Studio. Download Marlin, compile it in Visual Studio Code, and flash it to the motherboard. They gloss over a couple of kind of important steps. So unless you're a software developer and you've compiled firmware before, you might struggle a little bit. So I'm going to try and cover all that stuff as well. So let's tear into it. Okay, I got the machine on its side, and your motherboard is going to be under this cover right here. It looks like it's held on with 3 screws. And just as a reminder, I have never done this before. This is my first time doing this. So if you're watching this expecting me to be an expert, I am not, but we're going to figure it out together. Okay. So I'm not sure what size that is. It looks like it might be a Torx. Let me get a better look at that. I was mistaken. They are not Torx. They're 2mm Allen screws. At least a 2mm fits and a 2.5 dozen. So I suppose it could be SAE, but I would think that unlikely given that this machine is from China. Like everything else today, right? So this probably comes with the right Allen key in the tool bag that comes with the machine, but you know, those tools that come with furniture and I don't know, other things you buy, they're usually not worth anything. Usually pretty imprecise. So let's see, is there somewhere else? This will slide off. I don't want to bend it. Is there another screw somewhere? Oh, there might be a couple on top. Is there one here? Okay. And is there one over here too? Looks like there's one back here. You have to slide the bed forward to get to it. I don't know why they designed the cover this way. It seems kind of strange. Let's see, are all these screws the same length? They are not. The 2 on top are longer screws than the 3 on the bottom. Let's flip it on its side again. And we're dangling. A little dirty in there. Like I said, this thing's got quite a few hours on it. Let me get you guys set a little bit lower, improve the lighting a little bit so you can see what we're doing. Okay, hopefully you guys can see that a little bit better. So here's where our wiring harness comes in. It looks like there's some hot glue that holds the connectors in place that we'll have to remove. I think, yeah, I'd recommend probably taking a picture of everything here before you take anything apart, just to make sure everything goes back where it's supposed to go. Let's see if I can get a little bit more light. It's still a little hard to read. Curious what microcontroller's in there. Oh man, my eyes aren't what they used to be. I can't see that. I'll need to stick that under the microscope. But this board is a Creality 3D V1.1.4. This is one of the older designs. Nothing wrong with it, still works. As you can see, the print quality was still pretty good. But again, not the latest and the greatest. So I'm going to take a couple pictures of my phone, and you guys should do the same of where all these cables go, just so you can put it back together the right way. And they are labeled, which is kind of nice. So you got these little tags on there. So the top one says E, then Z. This one's really difficult. That one's Y. And the last one I think is X. That would make sense, right? Or do I have it backwards? Is this one X? Nope. So you have E, Z, Y, and then X, top to bottom on this side. And on this side, you have those cables labeled. Those top two don't look like they are. This one is Z, Y, ZY what? ZYX, and then your fan right here. So two white cables, Z, Y, X, and fan. I wonder what E is. I mean, I get X, Y, Z. What's E? Maybe extruder? That would make sense, right? This board doesn't seem to be fastened very well. It's kind of loosey-goosey. Maybe the whole thing is. This whole thing might come out if you just take these two screws on top off. Let's try that. Might be able to get easier access to everything rather than working upside down. Okay, we'll soon find out if this was a mistake or not. These are 3mm Allen screws. Let's see if this gives us any better access to things. Oh yeah, maybe. I think that's a help. Maybe? I don't know. I think it gives us a better view of things. Although some of the cables are, whoops, make sure you drop everything. That's pretty critical. Yeah, I don't know if that's a wise move to take that plate off unless you're gonna disconnect some more stuff. I'll leave them loose for now just so we have some wiggle room. So I think next we're gonna start unscrewing the board and get a better look at it that way where everything goes and take some more pictures. Okay, we're gonna unscrew the main board. Looks like there's a couple of 2mm Allen screws. Let's get our magnet to pick that up. And these screws are super short. Where are the other ones? So there's two there. Is it just those two? Let's look at the new board. That would probably tell us, right? The new board looks like it has 5 screws. I must be blind. Oh, there's one. Looks like there's one all the way down here too. That's 4, and that's it. So now we can see it a little bit better. And this board has, like I said earlier, some hot melt glue on the inside of the connectors to, I guess, as positive retention. So we will have to remove that. There's new board on the left, old board on the right, side by side. You can compare them side by side. They really have pretty similar layouts. Now this kit comes with pretty much 0 instructions. However, it does come with this card that you can scan the QR code and go to the sellers. I guess they have a web page, and on there are links to you guys can hopefully see that. There's a link to some Facebook videos, YouTube videos, firmware downloads, and so on. I'm going to use my electronic side cutters to try to move that super glue out of position. Yeah, it seems to work pretty well. Just don't cut any wires. Did I say super glue? I meant hot melt glue if I said super glue. Haven't had my coffee yet. And I think I'm going to put some positive retention back on here as well. I'll probably use hot melt glue. Reason why is that if these are probably drivers for the steppers, and they consume a good bit of current. And if you have a loose connection or something rattles loose or whatever, you don't want to have a high resistance connection there. You want to make sure that connection is solid. Took a little piece out of the connector that time. Looks like these are all glued on in one strip. I wonder if we can just peel that off with our fingernail. Yeah, that kind of works. Yes. They didn't put individual dabs here. They just ran a long bead. I think that's hot glue. Feels like it. All right, I think it's time to start transferring cables over. Looks like this is keyed a little bit differently. So far, so good. The connectors are even in the same order. They're all seated, so that's good. Let's get our LCD ribbon cable, which is keyed. Just get that out of the way for now. This fan's making me nuts too. Let's take care of that. There. Deal with that in a minute. Okay, so we need to do... I wonder if does it matter which one's fan 1 and fan 2? Probably not. Okay, let's transfer the thermistors. I think there might still be a little bit of glue on here. If you ever get stuck, just keep in mind that there's a diagram on the seller's Amazon page that you can refer to if you get lost. I think these two are identical looking, so you just got to be careful you don't mix them up. Let's see. I wonder if I should just unplug everything and plug everything back in. Because these cables don't look like they want to reach. I don't know, maybe we'll figure it out. Take some of that excess hot melt glue off. And these just transfer over one by one. That's your Z stop right here. Now I read somewhere some people want you to leave this unplugged. I don't know if you should or not. I've heard conflicting information about that. So I'm going to plug it in for now. Might regret it later. Here's the Y. This is becoming a mess, geez. I think it's going to be difficult to swap these over one by one. Leave the Z stop out of the way. Let me think about this for a second, guys. Let's see. These thermistors seem to be the shortest cables. Maybe we should do those first. This is what? That's Y. Let's plug that in. The Y stop. Here's our X stop. You guys see? Yeah, I think you can. There's a 3-pin connector. I don't see one of those on the old board. I wonder what that's for. Fan connectors here. That one had some glue on it too. We'll plug this in later. That goes into the fan port right below this one, I believe. Let's see if all these are untangled. So there's X. Here's Y. There's Z. There's the hot end. Okay, now we got a couple screw terminals here that we got to deal with. Let me just make sure they're identical. Okay, it does appear that this wiring is all the same on both boards. And the polarity matters. So I believe this is the main power wire here. So this has to come in. You know what, let me do that one last. I took a picture of all this before unhooking it, so I know how to put it back together. I think this is the smarter way to do this, right? So let's get these wires for the screw-in terminals out of the way. Make sure I got that polarity correct. It was red on the left, black on the right. Yep, red, black. And then we have the small black and red. So this one, red on the left, black on the right. I think these are for the extruder cooling fan, I think. Surprised it just wasn't a connector. Like, why would they put this in a screw terminal? That fan doesn't draw that much current. You want to make sure that your main power screw terminals are nice and tight, because if you have a bad connection there, again, you're going to have a high resistance connection. You'll melt something. Don't ask me how I know that. Oops, missed the wire tightening that one. Okay, so now we have these guys over here. I think I'm missing some wires. Oh wow, I put those in the wrong spot. No one stopped me. Come on, guys. These aren't the main power wires. These go over here. That would have been bad. I could just unplug my Z stepper motor by mistake. Make sure you capture the wire, obviously. You're tightening the screw, give the wire a good tug, it shouldn't come back out. Okay, now let's see. Now we have, I'm just looking at the picture on my phone. Now we have red goes in here. And then we had black in here, I guess red, black. I think this is for the bed heater. Again, make sure you capture the wires. See, that time I did not. There we go. In black. There. And we have just two plain old red wires over here. I looked up in the diagram on the Amazon listing. This 3-pin connector here was unlabeled. I wonder what that's for. It might be labeled here, but I'm going to need a magnifying glass to read it. This is untinned stranded wire. And make sure you grab the wire and not the insulation on the wire with these screw terminals. That's another kind of tricky thing. Or if you want, you can just go tin the wire. All right, you guys don't need to watch me fight with this. Okay, got all the wires on the board. I tightened everything down. I'm going to double check the connections. Now I'm just going to plug in the BLTouch cable, just so we don't have to come back in here and mess with it. Okay, we got that. Probably need to do a little bit of hot gluing, right? And I'm gonna have to plug back in my Z-stepper cable. It became unplugged. I've double and triple checked all my connections, and I'm heating up the hot glue gun right now to put some glue on these connections just so they don't wiggle free. Okay, here goes. Don't need a lot. Oops, just touched it. Let's flip it over and do this side. Make sure these are all pressed in there firmly. I realize you guys probably can't see this too well. Just like the factory, right? I'm going to put some also on the cooling fan. I'll plug in the other cooling fan in just a moment once this dries and things are just in better alignment. Okay, now it's time to screw the board back into place. Take care not to pinch any wires. So far so good, right? Haven't broken anything yet. Let's get one of those tiny 2mm Allen screws and secure the board. And just put the rest of the screws in. Got the board screwed back in. Just gonna do a little bit of cable management here. Just gonna zip tie the new BLTouch cable to this existing cable just to secure it. think you can also somehow pass it through this wire loom here. I'm not going to go that crazy. I also fastened or reattached the fan cable here too. Fan cable is going to be difficult to hot glue in, so I didn't even try. Okay, I think we said our short screws go in here, on the bottom, and then long screws come in from the top. I think so, anyway. There we go. I think that has to be a long, or maybe the long screws are on the bottom. I don't remember. The short screw doesn't fit there. Maybe I just wasn't paying attention. Okay. Let's flip it back up one end. Make sure all your wires are contained in the box and none are squeezing out. Just finish putting the screws on. Okay, I got the printer back in its kind of dedicated area. It's plugged into power. Let's give her some juice and see what happens. Hopefully it doesn't, as AV would say, let the smoke out. Is it a different USB plug? Interesting, they moved to a different USB plug? Okay, let's get a different plug. Guess it kind of makes sense since that other one was pretty archaic. Even by the standards from when this device was released, it was archaic. Looks like it goes in like this. There we go. Yeah, so if you don't have any micro USB cables, I mean, can't imagine you don't, but if you don't, have one ready because you're going to need it. Make sure it's a power and data cable, because apparently not all. Heard some weird funky noise. We make it do something useful. I'm going to do auto home and I'm going to be ready to hit the power just in case something doesn't work. Actually, maybe I'll keep my finger on the limit switch. Nothing's happening. Just making weird noises. Oh, that's why I had the power off. I was drawing USB power. Silly me. I don't know why they don't prevent that. Like, why can this device be powered from the USB port? I always thought that was kind of strange. Let's try that again. Wow, super quiet. Can't hear it at all. Just hear the fans. Okay, so it's not really auto homing. I don't know if it's supposed to do that or what. Let's do a preheat PLA and just see what happens. Let's do the bed first. You can feel it starting to get a little warm. 33C, 34C. Now this is supposed to have thermal runaway protection built in, so that if the temperature gets too high or if it calls for heating but it doesn't see a temperature rise in the detected temperature, then it shuts off the heater. So there's a lot of nice safety features. I think that the original board has that too. I don't know why the auto homing didn't work. Did I forget to plug something in? Something pop out? No, I got the Z steppers in there, locked in place. Why does it say stopped? Let me mess around with this a little bit, see what's going on. I don't know if you guys can see this, but this might be the problem. This firmware apparently already has the BLTouch compiled into it, which is kind of what you'd expect. It was sold as a kit. And I don't have the BLTouch plugged in, so maybe that's why it's angry. Let's finish hooking things up, hook up the BLTouch, and we'll try again. Maybe not though, this is a super old version of Marlin, 1.1.2. Let me grab that card from the Amazon seller and see if I can download a firmware update, because I want to get to Marlin 2 at least. Okay, I downloaded that firmware that you saw on the computer over to a micro SD card, and on my computer I just shoved that in the side of the computer and named the firmware firmware.bin. I think the firmware names have to be unique. I just took a guess. So I'm just going to put the SD card in the SD card socket. Okay, let's give the printer power. Yeah, and I was told the screen would go blank for a while it does the firmware update. And appears it might be done. Bug fix 2.0.x Marlin. Cool. Initialize EEPROM. Let's do a reset. Okay. Let's see, what do we see here? About printer. Let's do printer info. Okay. So this firmware is compiled in January of 2021. Let's do board info. Creality 4.2.7. Neato. Thermistors. Okay, not really gonna adjust that. Oh wow, some more features here, huh? Main. So is there still a prepare info screen? Motion. Okay. A lot of menu options here. Let me browse through here and not waste your time. I got the BLTouch sitting here ready to install. Now I think this is the mount that I'm supposed to use for my printer, and I'm guessing that it mounts just like that. And it comes with two sets of screws, long and short. So I'm assuming that the long screws screw into this plate here, and the short screws hold the BLTouch in place. Let's take those out. Now I'm also assuming it's going to be a lot easier to install the BLTouch. Yeah, it'll be easier to install the BLTouch before this mount is installed. So I'm going to take the shorter screws and just screw the BLTouch in place. And again, we're mounting it like that, so I think I'll do it like this so the wiring harness is facing the right direction. Okay, just put in the last screw. So something like that, right? So let's get these remaining screws out. Actually, go ahead. Whoops. Hope I didn't damage it. You know what? I think I'm going to flip this around. Okay, I flipped it around so the BLTouch piece is facing outside. I did that because I want the wire to come up and attach to here, rather than have to come out here and then flip over. So I think it's just a little more efficient to do it that way. Let's plug in the wire before we bolt it in place, because it looks like it'd be next to impossible to attach after the BLTouch is screwed in. I think it only goes in one way. Let's check. Hard to tell, it's a small connector. Looks like a really small JST connector. Yeah, I think it goes in like this. Yep. So just like that. You'll see some contacts facing out. Let's bolt it in. Take the last screw out here to make sure nothing falls in the BLTouch and damages it any more than I already have. I feel like I'm pretty mechanically inclined, but I'm not very good at working on small things. Like, give me a big car or truck or diesel, something, right? But I don't know, these small components, I just have big hands. It's hard for me to do this. I'm sure I'm not the only one. Okay, so there's our one. Yeah, that would have been really difficult to get that cable installed with BLTouch installed. So just tighten that down. I'm not going to zip tie it just yet, only because I want to make sure it works. Let's turn our printer on. Okay, the BLTouch lit up. Hopefully that's a good thing. Get you guys a better position there. So let's do a bed leveling procedure and see what happens. I'm going to use my finger to stop it. I'm going to have my finger on the other finger on the power, just in case something goes awry. Let's do under motion. Let's do level bed. Okay, so it seems to be working okay. It's hitting my finger and stopping. All right, cool. Let's do this. Let's do an actual bed leveling procedure now that we've seen that it works. Let's do motion, level bed. I'm not going to keep my finger there this time. Now I may have to unplug the Z-axis stop, which is right here, because is the BLTouch gonna work, or is it the Z-axis stop gonna get hit? I don't know. So we'll see what happens. Just watching to see how close it gets. So it's sampling the bed height at different locations. I'm checking to make sure that the nozzle doesn't touch the bed, and it's not. So far, so good. Let's make sure this wire doesn't get tangled anywhere. So I guess it's doing a 4x4 rather than a 3x3 grid, which is fine. So quiet. That noise you're hearing in the background is a leaf blower from the neighbor's landscaper. All I hear are the cooling fans from the 3D printer. Actually, it wasn't doing a 4x4, was it? All right, so I guess the bed is level, right? Let me tie up this cable. And of course, when I say when the bed is level, the machine knows where the bed is level and where it is not, and how flat it is, or if it's not flat. So all it really did was read the height of the bed at various locations relative to the BLTouch. And I believe that's fed into the computer so that when it's printing, you get hopefully a perfect first layer. Because if your bed is not flat like mine is, or mine is not flat, depending upon where you start your print, you'll get different results. So if I start a print in the center, I get different results than if I start one here, because the center of the bed has a dip in it. I don't know why. Maybe it's just this matte. I suppose it could be a lot of things. But it doesn't really matter, because the BLTouch supposedly fixes that problem. All right, let's trim off the excess there. Okay, got everything neat and tidy. I know I said in the beginning we might be flashing our own firmware, but I'm not sure if we're going to have to. Or compiling our own firmware, I meant, sorry. So far, so good. The out-of-the-box firmware from first layer seems to be working just fine. Not the one that came with it, but the one that they have downloaded on their website that we put on the SD card. So we had version firmware 1.1.2, which is a pretty old version of Marlin, and we upgraded to 2.0.x, that bug fix release, and seeing as how it's dated in January, it's probably a pretty new version of Marlin. So what's next? I vaguely remember seeing a video on the computer about adjusting the Z-axis offset, so let me go take a peek at that and see if there's anything we have to do there. First Layer has a really good video that you can get access to once you go to that special URL where they show you how to figure out the Z offset that you need. And I think it's probably going to be different for each machine. So the procedure seems to be pretty simple. Let's do an auto home. Okay, so we're at auto home. It says our Z is 10. I also just unplugged the Z-axis limit switch because they say in the video you don't need that anymore. So now, I think they tell you to go to motion and move axis, move Z in small increments. Let's see. Bring it down to 0. It's still way high though. Huh, I wonder what's going on. Okay, I've done some research. Nothing's ever easy, is it? But that's why I'm doing this video. So, there's apparently this soft end stop feature. So, let me back up a bit. So, the correct procedure, at least from the way I understand it, is you want to, this paper passes very cleanly below here. You want to figure out how far down your Z has to go so this paper just drags. And that's going to be your Z offset. But it wouldn't let me go any lower than 0. So there's apparently some kind of safety or check built into the firmware, or it's a configuration setting that it's called this soft end stop. So I believe when that's turned on, it limits you from going below 0. Now you can disable that feature, but you can't disable it, at least not in this machine in the LCD. You have to issue a G-code command. So I've done that through Octoprint, which I already have set up here running on a Raspberry Pi. I can cover that in another video. Super easy, awesome. You can move your printer away from your computer. You don't have to be hooked up through USB all the time, so it's a great way to do it. I've been doing it for years, and I wouldn't have it any other way. That said, it also gives you a way to issue a G-code command. So I issued G-code, I think it was M211S0. Let me just double check before I give you bad information. I think that's it. Yeah, that was it. So this is the G-code console in Octoprint. You can see here, send M211S0. It said echo soft end stops off. So that's what you need to do, I believe, or to be able to go negative on the Z-axis. Okay, so let's try and see if that disabling of soft end stops allows me to go negative here. It does, cool. So we're gonna continue to go negative until I believe this paper just starts to rub. So there's some drag at 2.9. 2.9 is probably where we want to be. That feels pretty good. So I believe that becomes our new Z offset. So let's go back. I don't remember where to do this now. Let's go main, configuration. Probe Z offset, there we go. What was it? It was minus 2.9, right? 2.8? What was it, guys? Wow, they really let you go pretty nuts with this. Let's do 1 for now. Let's make sure it works correctly. So we should have like a 1 millimeter gap, or I guess almost a 2 millimeter gap. If we do a bed level now, or auto home rather. I probably should clean my nozzle before I do this. Got some PLA on the bottom of it that might affect the reading. All right, so I cleaned the nozzle, and after cleaning the nozzle, my Z offset has changed a little bit. Now it's minus 2.4, creates a bit of drag. So let's enter that into the computer. Let's go back up here, go back to motion, go back to main, configuration, probe Z offset. Paper is like locked in there right now. Is it moving right now when I do this? I think it was. Okay, so I didn't know that. The probe will actually, the nozzle moves when you do this. You can get really fine. So maybe they've revised the procedure. That's pretty loose. pretty tight. So let's do like 950 maybe. That's pretty good. I think I did it right. Let me go check the video again just to make sure. Okay, I'm gonna follow the whole procedure again end to end just to make sure I understand it and make sure, I guess you guys understand it too. So I'm gonna go, so I've already auto-homed the machine. I'm gonna go to motion, move axis, move Z. I'm gonna go to 0.1 millimeter. I'm gonna bring this down to 0. Moving the paper. So we still have our end stops disabled. So I'm moving the paper, moving the paper. I wonder if I made a dimple in the bed because now it's like minus 3.4. Let me move over a little bit. Oh, maybe not. Let's try something else. Let's move X. Let's move it. There we go. Just for giggles. So I moved it over to a new spot because before when I was dialing this in, remember I went really tight and actually put a hole through the paper, so I may have put a dent in this bed. So I just moved to a different spot where that's not going to happen. So let's go back here. Oh, I guess I didn't. So 3.4 seems to be where it's at. Okay. So now let's go back to the main screen. Actually, let's move it back up. So you remember minus 3.4. Okay, so I moved it up. Let's go back up here. Go back here. Gonna go into main, configuration wizard. I'm sorry, configuration, probe Z offset. It was 3.4, right? Going the wrong direction. And I'm feeling with the paper. Still a very wide gap. It's moving like a tenth of a thousandth of a millimeter with each increment. So this takes a little while, at least on this machine. I don't know if others are different. Still plenty of clearance. We're up to like minus 2.2, minus 2.3, 4, 5, 8, 9, 3, 3.1, 3.2, slowing down, 3.3, minus 3.4. Why is nothing happening? Before it was moving. What the heck is going on? I don't get this. I'll tell you what, let's just set it to 3.4. That seemed to be pretty good. And we'll save this. Store settings. Now let's go to main, motion, move axis, move Z. And now at 0, I have some drag. See that? So now 0.0, that's minus 3.4 millimeters of clearance. And I have some drag on the paper. So I think we're good. I think we got our Z out offset set. We might be good to do a test print, dare I say? Should we try it? Let's do it. Okay, I'm going to start with a bed level test. It's just going to print, I think, a series of concentric squares. That'll tell us whether or not, or should give us an idea of whether or not the bed is level or bed leveling worked. So Bed is heating up right now, then the hot end, and then it should get printing. It should be done in about 40 minutes, so we'll check on it periodically. Okay, the printer is just about to start. Let's see what happens. Doesn't really seem to be printed much. I'll give it a minute. So far, so good. This thing's so quiet, I keep on forgetting it's running. We'll let it keep printing, but seems to be making good progress, and so far, so good. Everything seems fine. Cool upgrade. Now, we will do the benchy and I guess one of the screwdriver holders so we can compare them side by side. I'll mark the ones that that were printed with the old main board without the BLTouch, just so we can tell them apart. Okay, printing is done. I mean, it seems pretty uniform. I don't know if these, looks like there's a little, yeah, okay, so that's just like some weird connections there. But yeah, it seems to be adhered kind of uniformly. I think we should try doing a real print now. So we know the bed leveling works. We know that the printer works. So we tested the motherboard. We basically tested all facets of the machine by doing that test. Now let's do a real print. We'll do, I guess, that benchy boat thing. I wrote old on the bottom of this one so we know which is which. So I'll start the print in just a moment. Should start to print any second. I actually entered a G-code command in Ultimaker Cura, which is the slicer that I use, to do bed leveling before every print. We'll see if it works. Still amazing how quiet it is. Appears it did not work. I need to revisit that. But it's printing. It'd be great to have a more consistent first layer with stuff, because that's always been an issue. Let's let it print. We'll check back in a little bit. Okay, so the print is done. On the right, we have the old one. New one I just printed on the left. I would say print quality is probably about the same. There are a couple notable differences that I'll show you. Most obvious being the first layer. So notice the first layer here, it's much smoother. You can probably see that you can read it very easily. This one, the old one, not so much, more jagged. Not a very high quality first layer. I would say everything else is pretty comparable. You know, it's get you a little close up there. Print time was about the same. This was maybe 2 minutes faster here. So, I mean, it was a small difference, but not a lot. I mean, I was pretty happy with the quality before on the old main board, but I think we got a bit of an improvement here. Again, that was the new one, and the old one. Yeah, I would say that the new board probably has slightly better quality overall. It's not night and day, but it is noticeable. But again, both are very good. Let's see, what else do we want to cover? That might be it, right? We did the BLTouch. We did the main board. So I guess, yeah, let's talk a little bit about what I learned from doing this. There's a lot of information online. There's a lot of outdated or wrong information online. Like I open with this video, if you look at the listing for this main board and BLTouch combo, it says you have to order your own mount or print your own mount. You don't. It comes with one. So that's some misinformation. It's also a little unclear whether you have to compile your own firmware or flash it. I don't know that you would. I mean, it seemed to work okay out of the box. Keep in mind it was misbehaving a little bit, but I didn't have the BLTouch plugged in. So I think this probably would have worked out of the box with that super, super old version of Marlin. Flashing was very easy. You just put the firmware, you go to the vendor's website. Like I said, in this case, first layer, you download the appropriate firmware file for your machine. I got the firmware for the Ender 3D Pro with the 4.2.7 main board with BLTouch. I don't have the version 2 display. That's another add-on I didn't need. We stuck it on the SD card, booted it up, and it was done. It was very easy. That's one of the nice things about the new main board. Based on the STM32, it has a built-in bootloader, so you don't have to plug in like a serial program or anything like that. It's all taken care of. There was some misinformation about the Z-stop. I think I said before, I have mine unplugged, so it's just kind of dangling. Some people plug some of the BLTouch cables into the Z-stop header on the board. Some people don't. I just have cable to the board. I mean, it was, like I said, I didn't splice any cables, didn't change any pinouts, nothing. So I would say this kit at this point is pretty well refined. The only thing I would recommend doing is just upgrading to the new version of Marlin as soon as you get it. And again, that was a pretty painless process. Everything you need is in the kit. Anything else? At some point I might try to compile my own version of Marlin. This build, I think I mentioned, is from January of this year, 2021. I think there's been quite a few changes since then. I don't know if any of them are drastic or would affect this printer, but you guys probably don't know, I am a software developer by profession, so that is kind of interesting to me. It doesn't look all that difficult to do. So I'll try to do maybe a follow-up video if you guys like this video. Maybe I'll do a follow-up if there's some interest on compiling and flashing your own custom firmware. Again, it doesn't look too tough. You just have to, the hardest part seems to be just configuring it properly. There's a lot of config options in Marlin, as you might imagine, given the wide breadth of printers that it supports. I think that's probably it. Anyway, hope you guys found this video informative. I'll leave links to all the products that I use or all the products that I bought in the description in case you guys want to pick it up. Highly recommend this kit. It's wonderful. Like I said, easy to install. Comes with everything you need in the kit. Just have to filter out all the misinformation on the internet. If you guys, sorry about that, guys. Battery died midstream. And why is this one showing like it's gonna die? Anyway, I'll be quick. Anyway, again, recommend the seller, recommend the kit. It's awesome. If you want one with an LCD screen, they do make a kit for that as well, but I don't particularly care because I control this thing from Octoprint. If you guys like 3D printer stuff in general, I think it's super cool. Let me know. I'll do some more videos. Otherwise, please subscribe and stay safe, everybody. Thanks for watching. Okay, so I got my first layer card here, and I typed in the URL that they have on the card. It takes me to this page here. Looks like we can download firmware here. And this is the chart I was talking to you about where they have the old board, the new board side by side. They have all the ports labeled. They make it pretty easy here to swap the cables over. So let's see, we have a BLTouch. We don't have a version 2 screen, so this is not very well organized. Let's see, so you have BL 4.2.7 plus BLTouch plus V2 screen. That's not us. Contact us on Facebook. Creality BLTouch, Creality Z-axis extension, Creality touch screen firmware. Ender. Let's go to Ender 3 Pro. You got to double click on it. Firmware for Ender 3 Pro. All right, so let's see. Is there anything in here that makes sense? We have. How do we see the full file names? Oh, there we go. Okay. We don't have a runout sensor, so we just have 4.2.7 board plus BLTouch. Let's see, what's this one? Not the V2 screen. Not the V2 screen. No, not the Creality stock Marlin. This one. There we go. Newest Ender 3 Pro 4.2 plus BLTouch.bins. This must be what we need. Sorry guys, I don't really use Google Drive. Okay. All right, so we have our firmware. Now I think you have to copy to a micro SD card. I'm not sure if it has to be a certain file name or not, whatnot. So I'm just going to throw that on an 8 gig micro SD card that I have standby.